Imagine trying to steer a ship. Right. But it's through this massive storm. And the ship itself, it's weakening. Other ships are circling, just waiting for you to mess up. And your own crew, they're divided.
Yeah, that's a pretty good picture.
That kind of gives you a glimpse into the world of Empress Dowager Cixi. So today, we're really plunging into her story. It's this tale of just immense pressure and this, well, extraordinary figure who navigated it all.
And we're using Anchee Min's The Last Empress as our main guide here. It's a fascinating book because, look, it's a novel, yes, but it's really deeply rooted in the actual history of Cixi and the late Qing dynasty, the last imperial dynasty of China.
Okay.
Min uses real historical documents, things like imperial decrees, edicts, even newspaper articles from the time. She mentions in her author's note she's aiming for historical accuracy, but she also acknowledges that any interpretation of the past is always going to be subjective to some extent.
Right, right. So this isn't going to be like your dusty old history textbook. Think of it more like getting the essential insights into this really pivotal time in Chinese history, but seen through the very dramatic, very personal story of this one woman.
Exactly.
We're talking about a Qing dynasty that was, well, losing its grip. The Forbidden City, the Imperial Palace, it was getting more and more out of touch with this rapidly changing world outside.
Yeah, incredibly insular.
And in that kind of environment, even like small missteps inside those palace walls could have huge consequences,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Massive repercussions.
And it's into this world that Orchid, that Cixci's name initially arrives, just one of hundreds, literally hundreds of young women, all vying for the emperor's attention.
A very competitive environment.
So our mission today, for you, the learner, is to pull out the key moments, the key decisions that really shaped Cixci's incredible life. We want to try and understand her character and the just unbelievably turbulent times she ruled through, but, without getting totally bogged down in every single historical detail.
Getting the essence of it.
Exactly. Okay, so Orchid walks into this super intense competitive place. How did she even begin to, like, stand out, to gain any kind of influence?
Well, what's really striking, I think, is the agency she shows right from the get-go. The book suggests she wasn't just passive, waiting around. No, she actively cultivated skills to get the emperor's attention.
Like what kind of skills?
Well, the book mentions training herself, but it also describes her using bribery, basically, to get access to his rooms. Now, whether the whole seduction part is, fully historically accurate or a bit romanticized, well, that's up for debate.
Sure.
But the outcome, capturing Emperor Xianfeng's attention, that's undeniable. It really highlights how she understood early on that in this superstructured court environment, personal relationships were, well, they were a powerful tool.
Okay, so she gets his attention. But it wasn't just about that personal connection, was it? There was something else, a really game-changing event that cemented her position.
Oh, absolutely. The birth of Xianfeng's only son and heir, Tengqi. That was the crucial turning point.
The only son. Wow.
Yeah, and that single event just catapulted Orchid to the rank of empress. I mean, a monumental leap in status, in influence within that rigid Forbidden City hierarchy.
Huge.
But, and this is important, even that position, Empress, it wasn't like total security. The emperor could still take other consorts, and he did. And maybe even more significantly, raising her own son.
Yeah.
That wasn't entirely up to her.
Oh, right.
Tengqi was actually under the care of Empress Nuhuru, who was the emperor's senior wife. So even as an empress, Orchid's fight for real power, for actual security, it just continued. It really shows you how precarious even the top spots were in that system.
So she's juggling all this palace politics stuff, and then bam, the whole empire gets hit by this massive external crisis.
That's right. The invasion. Britain, France, Russia, 1860. It was seismic. Peking gets occupied. The imperial court has to flee to Johor. Exile.
Humiliating.
Totally.
Yeah.
And the peace treaties that followed imposed these really humiliating terms. It deeply affected Emperor Xianfeng's health. Probably contributed to his death, actually.
Okay.
And this period of intense upheaval, it creates this power vacuum, right? And a whole new set of opportunities for Orchid to, strengthen her position even further. The external threat actually ended up causing these internal power shifts.
Which leads us to the palace coup. This sounds like a moment where she really steps up, takes charge on a bigger scale.
Precisely. After Xianfeng died, this faction of the palace tried to seize power, a coup attempt. But Orchid, showing some serious political foresight, some real agility, she played a vital role in stopping it.
How?
She strategically allied herself with Prince Kung, that's her brother-in-law, and also General Young Lu. That alliance was critical. It showed she could forge these crucial partnerships when things got tough. It was a clear sign of her growing political skill.
Okay, now, the book keeps mentioning Young Lu. Their relationship seems like it was maybe more than just political maneuvering.
The narrative definitely suggests something much deeper, a really personal, complex connection. There's this idea of romantic feelings rekindling between them, which adds this whole layer of personal drama to the politics.
But she's the Empress Dowager now.
Exactly. Her status put huge limitations on any kind of personal life she could have. And Young Lu, being a high-ranking general, he was often away. That just amplified her sort of longing for him.
Mm.
We see her trying to arrange these secret meetings, using the eunuch Antihai as a go-between. It really highlights the constraints, the sacrifices her power demanded. It kind of humanizes her, amidst all the big historical stuff.
Then comes that moment after the emperor dies where the actual responsibility of ruling properly lands on her shoulders.
Yes, with Xianfeng gone, Orchid becomes co-regent, alongside Empress Nuharu. And there's this really powerful scene in the book where Orchid is just overwhelmed, grieving her dying mother, and her sister Rong just says to her, "Orchid, you are the ruler of China."
Wow, talk about pressure.
Right. It just emphasizes this immense weight of responsibility being thrust on her, even while she's dealing with profound personal loss. It shows how destiny, duty, it often just collides head-on with your personal feelings.
The book also uses some interesting symbols, doesn't it? Like her painting and using stamps to show the pressures of leadership.
Yeah, those details offer some fascinating insights. Her painting, which is described as amateurish, right?
Yep.
She covers up the flaws with official stamps. You can see that as a metaphor for, the imperfections in governing and the need to carefully manage how things look to the public.
Right, covering up the mistakes.
And the tutor who helps harmonize her, sort of less skilled brushstrokes that suggest how important advisors are, the collaborative side of creating a coherent public image. There's also a dream she has about rusty nails, interpreted as remorse, regret. It hints at the internal burdens, the tough decisions that come with power. These seemingly small things give you a deeper sense of the psychological pressure she was under.
And it wasn't just external pressures or relationships. There was constant maneuvering inside the court, too. That Sheng Pao case seems like a good example.
Oh, the Sheng Pao case is a brilliant example of Cixi's strategic thinking, how she navigated these really complex court dynamics. Okay, so Prince Kung was against executing him, right? Lots of petitions for his release.
Mm-hmm.
But Cixi managed it really deftly. She understood the feeling among Sheng Pao's own men. They actually wanted him gone because he treated wounded soldiers badly. And that was also why Young Lu supported his execution.
Ah, okay. So internal dissent against him.
Exactly. So Cixi strategically adjusted the rules about punishing his clan, achieving her goal, while making it look like she was responding to public feeling. It shows she was really aware of all the different factions and knew how to leverage them. Clever stuff.
Her relationship with her own son, Tumchi, also sounds like it was pretty challenging.
Absolutely. Losing his father so young definitely had a huge impact on him. The book shows Cixi worrying about his immaturity and her disagreements with Prince Kung about how he should be educated.
What was the disagreement about?
Well, Prince Kung accused her of overstepping her bounds, basically crossing the male-female line by getting too involved in state affairs. This created friction and limited her ability to, say, appoint non-Manchus to important jobs. But despite all these obstacles, Cixi was determined to rule. She seemed to really believe in her own judgment and just pushed forward, even without Prince Kung's full backing. Shows real strength of will, conviction.
Still, there were periods that looked like successes, right? Like the glorious Tongxi Renaissance.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, as the book points out. That era of apparent prosperity, it was largely because General Teng Kuofan finally managed to crush the Taiping Rebellion.
Okay.
But that victory really stemmed from Cixi's own strategic decisions. Her consistent support for Teng all along. She was actively involved in planning the battles, apparently. Even visualizing troop movements using maps Antihai made for her.
Really? She was that involved?
Seems so, according to the source. The final victory brought this huge relief, celebrations, a pilgrimage to the heavenly altar. And that success, in turn, kind of fueled her ambition to build up China's navy. It shows how periods of peace can actually be built on earlier, really difficult choices.
But as Tumchi got older, he caused different kinds of problems for Cixi.
Indeed. Discovering he was frequently visiting brothels, that created a major crisis. Cixi was clearly deeply troubled by it. She took steps, involved Dr. Sun Pao-Qian.
Mm.
Then there were conflicts over his friendship with this guy Sai Chen, his rebellious attitude generally, and he resented the treaties about foreign missionaries that his father had signed. That added another layer of tension. It really highlights the challenges any parent faces, just massively amplified because he's the emperor.
And throughout all this, that eunuch, Antehai, seems to be a really important figure in her life, multifaceted role.
Antehai was, undoubtedly, incredibly loyal and resourceful, a real confidant for Cixi. He did so many things, made those maps for the military campaigns, created distractions during audiences, even tried to set up those private meetings with young Lu.
Right.
He was also personally ambitious, apparently identified with the famous explorer Cheng Ho. But, being that close to Cixi made him a target in that complex palace environment.
Sure, jealousy, intrigue.
Exactly. We see him being protective of her, like rotating her attendants because he thought Tongxi posed a threat. But his loyalty also created friction, especially with Tongxi himself.
There's that allegory in the book about the pigeons and the parrot. That seems like a powerful way to understand Antehai's situation.
Oh, it's a very evocative metaphor, isn't it? For the constrained lives inside the Forbidden City. The pigeons, right, they're caged, but eventually they escape, find freedom. But the parrot, it's chained, destined to just stay there, serve, mimic, never truly free. It probably reflects Antehai's own feeling of being confined by his role, even though he was close to power.
Or maybe Cixi's situation, too.
Could be interpreted that way, too, yeah. Powerful, but maybe trapped by the expectations, the limitations of her position. The loss of the parrot in the story kind of symbolizes a deeper loss of spirit or agency within those walls.
Which brings us to the really tragic event of Antehai's death.
Yeah, his death had a huge, lasting impact on Cixi. The book details her intense grief, how determined she was to investigate how he died. She deeply suspected Governor Ting, and maybe even Prince Kung had a hand in it.
And Tongxi's reaction?
Described as unsettling, which only deepened her sorrow and suspicion. And the completely different stories about his final journey, the court's hypocrisy about eunuchs traveling outside Peking, it just underlines the treacherous political landscape.
So she was stuck.
Pretty much. Torn between wanting to punish those responsible and thinking about the wider political fallout, especially concerning Prince Kung's power. Her private morning rituals, lighting candles, reading poetry for him, it really emphasizes the personal loss, the genuine connection they shared.
As the years went by, did Cixi ever seriously think about stepping back? Giving up the power?
Yes, the book suggests she did entertain the idea of retirement. She imagined a more personal life, focused on things like gardening, opera, passions. Her position had mostly denied her. The idea of having grandchildren became important too. But despite wanting that, she stayed deeply involved in court affairs. And she found herself reflecting on her early days with Emperor Xianfeng back at Yuanming Yuan, a time when things were maybe simpler, more passionate between them. That longing for a simpler past really highlights the burden of her present.
But new problems kept cropping up. Conflict with her son, Tongxi, this time about restoring the Yuanming Yuan palace.
Yeah, that became another big point of contention. Tongxi was set on restoring the palace, but he ran into opposition from Prince Kung. Ironically, Prince Kung had initially supported the idea. Right. This disagreement led Tongxi to actually demote his uncle, though Nuharu stepped in later and got him reinstated. Cixi, who was officially kind of retired at this point, felt it was important for Tongxi to learn how to be emperor without her constantly looking over his shoulder. It shows that delicate balance between a ruler's personal wishes and what the state needs.
There's that quiet little moment mentioned. Cixi watching Li Lianing gardening amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, those small, seemingly insignificant moments are great, aren't they? They give you a glimpse into the personal lives happening against this grand historical backdrop. Li Lianing, who becomes super influential later, he's just there tending gardenias. A little snapshot of peace in the middle of all the political drama reminds you these powerful figures still had personal interest, moments of calm.
Concerns also started growing about Alut, Tongxi's consort.
Yes. Cixi became increasingly anxious about Alut. She saw her as a potential threat, partly because Alut apparently had a strong personality and didn't like Cixi. Then came the news that Tongxi was dying. That brought immense emotional turmoil for Cixi, and the court deciding to reject Western doctors that was driven by this fear of foreign interference really highlights the xenophobia of the time. A critical decision made in a crisis with huge consequences.
Tongxi's final moments, his poem. The book makes them sound quite moving.
Yeah, the narrative portrays his final request, that poem to a love. That had a profound impact on Cixi. His last piece of calligraphy was also really significant for her. It would be the only way his future child, if he had one, would know how his father held a brush.
Oh.
His death led to these elaborate funeral preparations, plunged Cixi into deep mourning. She remembered moments from their past, like in Jahal, saw the winter plum tree as a symbol of his constrained life. But even grieving, she was still assessing Alud's character, still wary of the potential trouble she might cause.
So after Tengqi's death, Cixi had to pick a successor. That must have been incredibly difficult.
Critical and incredibly complex, yeah. Loaded with political implications. She ended up rejecting Pulun concerns about his lineage in Saichen because she thought he'd been a bad influence on Tengqi.
Okay.
Then there was that unexpected encounter with Sai Tian and her sister Rong's really unsettling reaction to her own son. Just adds another layer of intrigue. But Cixi's decisive move in punishing Nuharu's servants, that signaled a real turning point, a forceful assertion of her authority in handling the succession mess.
And amidst all this high-stakes politics, the book loops back to young Lu again and his relationship with this woman, Willow.
Yeah, that thread keeps popping up. It's like a reminder that even powerful people like young Wu had these complicated personal lives, unrequited feelings. His inability to fully return Willow's affection because of his, well, enduring connection to Cixi just underscores the tangled web of emotions beneath the surface of palace life.
The choice of tutor Wang for the new young emperor Guangxu seems important, especially since he taught Cixi and Nuharu before.
It really highlights Cixi's intention to guide Guangxu's upbringing differently, perhaps hoping to avoid what happened with Dengqi. Tutor Wang was a known quantity, presumably trusted. And it's Cixi's dream around this time, which she interpreted as showing her uncertainty, the empire's vulnerability. It just underlines the immense weight on her shoulders as she tried to secure the dynasty's future.
As Guangxu took the throne, this new threat started looming large Japan.
Indeed. Cixi's shown reflecting on missed opportunities, chances to strengthen China's defenses earlier. She gets a bit nostalgic for simpler times. The book details Guangxu's personality, how he reacted to Tengqi's death, his preference for being alone, and Cixi's ongoing efforts to guide him. She starts to realize just how much strain the daily grind of imperial audiences puts on a child emperor. It's a shift in focus, really, toward these external threats and the empire's internal weaknesses.
Even when her own health started failing, Cixi kept going, didn't she? Dedicated to her duties, Guangxu's education.
Her resilience is pretty remarkable, yeah. Despite being ill at times, she kept attending important court meetings, overseeing Guangxu's studies. There was a temporary retirement where she seemed to get some energy back spending time in the gardens, and Guangxu apparently showed some gentle care for her then, which reveals a softer side to their relationship. There's this poignant conversation described where Cixi admits that, honestly, the dynasty's welfare was her main reason for adopting him, and Guangxu actually offers her some comforting words. It's a rare moment of genuine connection between them.
And then Nuharu's death marks another big shift.
Yeah, Nuharu's final illness and death are described, pointing out the different ways people approached her care. The grand funeral ceremonies followed. Cixi's quiet poem for Nuharu suggests, well, a complex relationship, maybe some shared history, a degree of understanding between these two powerful women over all those years.
But the external problems just kept coming. The conflict with France over Vietnam.
That loss really underscores China's growing weakness against modern military powers, the constant encroachment of foreign influence. Guangxu's feeling of helplessness shows how limited his actual power was.
Yeah.
Li Hongcheng's diplomacy, with Robert Hart playing a key role, ultimately led to giving up Vietnam, a really painful moment for Guangxu, realizing the consequences of past decisions, the empire's vulnerability.
And it's in this atmosphere, internal challenges, external threats, that Guangxu starts pushing for reforms.
Yes, influenced by people like Tutor Wang and later the more radical Kang Yue, Guangxu begins advocating for major reforms to modernize China. Cixi's reaction was initially cautious. She emphasized the Manchu dynasty's long history, privately had reservations about some of these men of wisdom pushing for rapid change, and the tough economic situation just made implementing big reforms even harder.
A big personal event for Cixi around then was young Lu coming back into prominence.
The reunion is portrayed as really emotional in the book. Cixi had apparently maneuvered strategically to get him back. Their interactions show this enduring connection, even after all the time and changes they'd both been through. And Li Ning being so meticulous about preparing Cixi for audiences, It highlights her continued focus on projecting that powerful image.
Family gatherings, as shown in the book, seem like moments for her to reflect on the past.
Yeah, Cixi reflecting on Alut's tragic end and Pearl's strong reaction to it. It underscores the lasting impact of those old palace intrigues, personal losses. There's also that childhood memory recounted, showing her early understanding of social dynamics, how to get what she wanted, a skill that definitely served her well later on.
The Manchu hardliners in the court started getting really nervous about Guangxu's reforms, causing more instability.
They were deeply afraid of his reform agenda, yeah. So they pushed for Cixi to keep the regency, seeing her as the only one who could stop radical change. Her strategic silence during this lets her kind of assess the shifting political winds and the restoration of her old home with Guangxu's support. Maybe his attempt at showing some independence. But Cixi is likely aware of all the political games being played underneath.
Li Hongchang's relationship with Cixi remained crucial during all this reform talk and international tension.
His polite visits to her, the recognition of how valuable his connections with foreigners were, it highlights his continued importance diplomatically. Cixi, suffering from insomnia, anticipating his visits. It suggests how much she relied on his experience, his insights during these really turbulent times. But there were disagreements about the Navy's readiness for war with Japan, showing different perspectives within the leadership about that growing threat.
And tensions within the imperial family itself just kept simmering.
Guangxu being anxious about his consort, Lan, Cixi trying to reassure him. Plus Prince Qin's self-defeating behavior. It just shows the internal weaknesses in the royal family. And despite Guangxu being angry with Li Hongchang, Cixi steps in to stop him being prosecuted further. She recognized he was irreplaceable. That quiet walk they took together before Li left Peking speaks volumes about their complex, long-standing relationship. And Prince Kung reluctantly coming back to serve at Cixi's request just further underlines the huge challenges of leading during this decline.
The string of losses to Japan must have been devastating for China and for Guangxu personally.
Oh, absolutely. Losing Korea, Taiwan, the Japanese influence growing in Manchuria, it deeply affected Guangxu, led to despair over the huge indemnities China had to pay. Cixi's own memories of the past started getting kind of warped by the present misery, it seems. The general unease in the palace reflected the empire's overall decline. Even Rong getting sick and refusing to see Cixi suggests the deep personal toll these times took.
As the senior figure, Cixi was still giving advice, like to Lan, the Empress.
Yeah, advising her on her duties, the importance of resilience. The disturbing news about Queen Min being assassinated in Korea, a stark reminder of how ruthless politics could be, both at home and abroad. And incidents of lying, deception within the Forbidden City just eroded trust even further, creating this atmosphere of suspicion.
That difficult relationship between Guangxu and Li Hongchang remained a major issue.
Guangxu just couldn't seem to trust Li Hongchang, even though Cixi kept defending him, recognizing his crucial diplomatic work in a really tough international climate. The near assassination attempt on Li, Cixi's sharp reaction to Guangxu's accusations, it shows the deep divisions.
Yeah.
Cixi got increasingly frustrated with Guangxu's seeming inability to grasp the political realities. She pleaded with him not to take Li for granted, showing how much she still relied on his expertise. Meanwhile, Li's struggling with foreign bankers, China's finances are precarious, and Russian influence is growing in Manchuria despite agreements. Just problem after problem.
Even Prince Kung, who'd been around for so long, his influence started to fade.
Yeah, his reflections on the past, his declining health, it marks the end of an era for that older generation of leaders. Cixi's memories of different times with him sound quite nostalgic, and Robert Hart's vital role in China's administration, Prince Kung worrying about him leaving. It highlights China's increasing reliance on foreign experts. Cixi was committed to keeping Hart, understanding just how crucial he was to their finances.
Cixi herself tried to talk some sense into Guangxu about his reforms.
She did, cautioned him against just copying Japan directly, pointing out China's circumstances were very different and that there wasn't much support for radical change within his own court. But Guangxu seemed determined to push ahead, bypass the old power structures.
And his reliance on that radical reformer, Kang Yue, became a huge point of conflict.
Cixi was definitely suspicious of Kang Yue.
Yeah.
Cautious, notably refused him a private audience, carefully assessed his pretty radical ideas. She seemed to get Guangxu's motives, though his past insecurities, this deep desire to fix China, maybe like his childhood fascination with fixing clocks.
Interesting metaphor.
Yeah. Yonglu also voiced skepticism about Kang's sweeping, untested plans. Cixi tried to stay neutral, publicly at least. But then Guangxu dismisses Li Hongchang. Li's farewell to Cixi is quite poignant, entrusting SS1 to her care. Even Yonglu agreed with Cixi about Li's importance. And then details emerge about a visit by the Japanese statesman Ito, initiated by Kang Yue, just fueling more tension and suspicion.
Cixi's strong reaction to Guangxu firing Li Hongchang again really shows how much she still relied on him.
Absolutely. And her worry grew about Guangxu living in this, fantasy world, disconnected from reality. The conservative faction, feeling deeply threatened by the reforms, put intense pressure on Cixi to step in. Prince Qing starts military preparations, and Cixi makes a strategic exit from the Forbidden City, pretending it's just a routine cemetery inspection. It shows how high the stakes were, the real danger involved.
Even in the middle of all that political chaos, Cixi's reflecting on mortality, yin and yang. It shows a different side to her.
Yeah, despite her age, the chaos, she's still introspective, thinking about fundamental principles. But Guangxu's reforms aren't progressing. War with Japan is looming. Reports come in about Japanese women supporting their soldiers. The atmosphere in Peking is volatile. And Cixi has this kind of fatalistic thought about the old saying, a ship sinks when a female goes on board, a sentiment she seemed to reject earlier in her own life.
Her doubts about Guangxu trusting Ito, her pleas for patience,
Wow.
they turned out to be justified.
Completely. Kang Yue's propaganda just got wilder, outright lies in foreign papers, damaging China's reputation internationally.
Cixi moving to the Summer Palace, that was a strategic move, wasn't it?
Definitely had multiple layers. Looked like giving Guangxu more freedom, maybe.
Yeah.
But it also got her away from the immediate pressure cooker of the Forbidden City while still letting her keep some control. And Li Ying's unwavering loyalty, his understanding of her personal vanities like the wigs, it offers this poignant look at their unique bond. His comment about a eunuch wanting to be missed highlights the personal sacrifices of serving the imperial family.
Guangxu's reform efforts seemed to get even more radical, leading to more conflict.
Yeah, his actions got increasingly extreme. Accusations against key figures, Young Lu, Li Hongchang, even Cixi herself. It shows how alienated and frustrated he felt. Cixi, though, playing the long game, adopted this strategy. Let him fire some people, but quietly lay the groundwork for bringing back the ones she thought were essential.
Clever.
Then her direct confrontation with him about moving the capital, his dismissive attitude, it shows a complete breakdown in their relationship. She was deeply worried about that upcoming military inspection in Tientsin. And her pragmatic side comes out again, understanding superstition. She summons Li Hongchang again to handle the sensitive issue of building railroads, knowing it was strategically vital despite traditional objections.
Then the huge confrontation, Young Lu, Li Ying, Yuan Shikai, bringing everything to a head with those shocking revelations.
It's just dramatic.
Discovering Guangxu's desperate plot to have Shikix assassinated. Yuan Shikai confirms it, says he got orders from Tan Shitong, a profound betrayal, an extreme crisis. And Yuan didn't go through with it.
His cautious actions, not fully carrying out the orders, likely stopped the assassination. Guangxu's reported plea for death afterward. Cixi's physical and emotional collapse. It's just tragic. Dr. Sun Pao-Tian's diagnosis confirms how serious it was for both of them. Guangxu confesses his trust in Kang Yue, wants to die.
Yeah.
Cixi firmly believes he was manipulated, just heartbreaking. And then Kang Yue publishes his self-serving version in the London Times, trying to get British help.
Wow, the aftermath must have been incredibly tense. Remorse inside the palace, but still pressure from outside.
A complex mix, yeah. Cixi and Guangxu were both deeply affected, though maybe differently. Kang Yue kept up his slander campaign from exile. Liang Qichao escaped with Japanese help, keeping the reform idea alive abroad. Kang's propaganda, fundraising with Japanese support, harsh criticism of Cixi in foreign press. It really damaged your international image. A French doctor confirms Guangxu is alive, but the narrative sticks, especially in the West. Cixi the tyrant, Guangxu the victim.
Cixi confronted Pearl directly about introducing Kang Yue to Guangxu.
Yes, and Pearl's defiant, unapologetic answer really reveals the deep ideological splits in the court, how much support Guangxu's ideas actually had among some people there. And Kang Yue kept plotting assassinations against both Cixi and Guangxu. Guangxu vows revenge. It's just a dangerous, volatile time. No foreign country responds to Guangxu's request to arrest Kang, showing the complex geopolitics. Negative press about Cixi just kept coming.
Despite all that negative publicity and turmoil, Cixi was still aware of how things looked, even if she was losing energy.
She seemed keenly aware, yes, still defending Guangxu's reform efforts, at least in principle. But her wariness, this growing listlessness, was noticeable. Then that unexpected visit by foreign ladies to the Winter Palace, it offered this surprising counterstory. Lady Macdonald especially pushed back against the criticism in the London Times with her own positive view of Cixi. Suggests a more complex reality than the papers often showed.
Then new threats emerge: anti-foreign feeling, the Boxer movement.
Yeah, resentment towards foreign influence boiled over into the Boxer movement. Governors were sending desperate messages about missionaries, opium problems. Germany seizing Tsingtao just inflamed things further, showed China's vulnerability. Cixi and Young Lu's relationship during this time sounds complex shared concerns, but maybe different ideas on how to handle it.
Cixi trying to manage the Boxer uprising sounds like walking a tightrope, balancing patriotism against the risk of international disaster.
Exactly. She recognized the anti-foreign feeling driving the Boxers, but she was also terrified of retaliation from foreign powers. Guangxu's sort of detached reaction, Tixi's own sad reflection that she'd failed both her adopted sons. It highlights the divisions, her personal anguish, her memories of past conflicts with foreigners added to her sense of dread. And then Guangxu issues that edict declaring war on foreign powers, citing encroachments, insults, a fateful, fateful decision.
And the Boxer uprising led to more devastation, especially in Peking.
Terrible devastation. The Imperial front gate burned, other parts of Peking destroyed by the Boxers. Just chaos. Cixi tried to provide for ministers, manage things, but it was spiraling. Distorted reports in the London Times about casualties in the legations, the tragic burning of the Hanlin Academy by General Tung's troops, widespread misinformation and destruction.
The siege of the legations pushed China right to the brink.
Yes, Young Lu sending supplies to the besieged legations that's shown as a moment of compassion amid the violence, reflecting Cixi's own internal conflict, maybe. But then the foreign soldiers enter Peking, just like the Opium War decades before, another profound humiliation. Cixi and Guangxu had to make this hasty, undignified escape from the Forbidden City. Lian Yingying, loyal as ever, helped them. Even then, Pearl apparently had some defiant last words.
That journey north, fleeing the foreign armies, sounds incredibly difficult.
Arduous is the word. Harsh conditions, lack of food, constant uncertainty. Li Lianying's resourcefulness was invaluable. Yuan Shikai sending supplies was a crucial lifeline. But arriving in Xi'an, still controlled by General Tung's loyalists, brought new anxieties. Young Lu intervened to reduce Tung's troops there, but it remained tense.
While they were in exile, Li Hongqiang had the terrible job of negotiating with the allies, who were making harsh demands.
Unenviable task, absolutely.
Yeah.
The allies demanded severe punishments for Prince Sung, Boxer leaders leading to executions. Li, despite his skills, couldn't get much better terms. It just showed how weak China was. Yuan Shikai's influence kept growing, seen as loyal and effective during the crisis. And the humiliating condition no Chinese military allowed in Peking really emphasized their defeat.
During the exile, Cixi relied more and more on Yuan Shikai.
Seems so. The novelty of train travel? Yuan gifting the railway carriages. It marks a shift. Cixi favoring him more. Guangxu, though, still resented him deeply. Cixi tried to get Guangxu to accept Yuan's talent. Young Lu's declining health was a worry, and his influence was key in securing Yuan's position. Li Hongqiang himself apparently worried about Yuan's ultimate loyalty after Young Lu passed.
The treaties finally imposed were deeply resented, especially by Guangxu.
Yeah, his bitterness about the terms, Li Hongqiang's skillful but costly negotiations, well documented.
Yeah.
A small bit of optimism came with Young Lu's daughter marrying Prince Chun Jr., maybe a sign of hope for the dynasty's future. Interestingly, Young Lu's view of Li Hongqiang seemed to soften near the end. Cixi gave her blessing to the marriage.
Cixi finally got to meet Robert Hart, the man who managed China's finances for so long.
Yeah, her anticipation for that meeting, her understanding of his vital role, it's clear in the accounts. Their brief meeting, her commenting on his accent. Yeah. A rare personal touch.
Then the devastating news of Young Lu's death. A huge blow for Cixi.
Profound grief, absolutely, given their long, complex history. Even Guangxu showed concern for her. Cixi's own health started failing. Her astrologer gave advice. Her weariness, reflecting on Young Lu's impact. It underscores their deep connection, the loss she felt. Her 70th birthday was marked with a royal photograph, a public event amidst her private sorrow.
That story about her seeing a ghostly image during the photo session is intriguing.
Very. And the astrologer's interpretation, the shadow figure as the people suffering, the lotus flowers as her guiding them through it. It offered this sense of continued purpose in her final years, even as her health declined.
And then, surprisingly, Cixi considers stepping down, suggesting Guangxu run for president.
It's a startling suggestion. Guangxu's reluctance, his lack of confidence and response. It shows the lasting impact of his years under her shadow and just how radical that idea was. News of an attempt on Yuan Shikai's life just added to the instability.
The military field inspection became a key moment. Cixi publicly backing Yuan Shikai.
Yeah. Her speech endorsing Yuan, his commitment to reform, that emotional moment remembering young Liu, it shows the mix of personal feeling and political calculation. Her symbolically offering Yuan legitimacy was a significant move in her final years.
Dreams of Antahaya started recurring, maybe reflecting on the past, her own mortality.
Quite possibly. Her declining health was becoming obvious. She seemed to know death was near. Her final meeting with Robert Hart, a poignant farewell between two figures who loomed so large in China's history.
And then the news of Guangxu's death just a day before her own. The end of an era.
Exactly. Her reaction, immediately focusing on naming Puyi as the new emperor, shows her dedication to the dynasty right to the very end. Her final audience, her last words reflecting on her reign, hoping for a better future for the throne. A poignant end to this remarkable, incredibly controversial life.
The brief epilogue in the book touches on what happened after Cixi died, giving a sense of the long-term impact.
Yeah, the rise of Mao Zedong, the revolution, Japan's actions in Manchuria, Kang Yue's later life, Li Ning's enduring loyalty. It gives you a glimpse of the profound, lasting consequences of the turbulent times Cixi lived through, the forces she grappled with.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Empress Dowager Cixi's life, using the Last Empress, what are the key things that should stick with you?
Well, what's truly fascinating is just how complex, how contradictory the picture of Cixi is that emerges, right?
Yeah.
We see her as this shrewd, often ruthless political player, yeah,
Mhm.
but also as this incredibly resilient leader navigating just immense crises, both at home and internationally.
Mm.
The book really delves into the intricacies of her personal relationships, the sheer turbulence of the era she governed. Ultimately, this account gives us a very human way to understand a really pivotal, transformative period in Chinese history.
And maybe something for you to think about as you go about your day. Cixi's story, as we've explored it here, it leaves us with these big questions, doesn't it? About power, the burdens of leadership, the challenges of navigating huge societal change. What parts of her long, eventful life resonate most with you? And what might thinking about that tell us about the enduring complexities of leading through upheaval even now? We definitely encourage you to explore the wider history, look for different perspectives on this undeniably significant figure.